Cool. Well, thanks to everybody for joining us on this Wednesday evening. We know that virtual events and Zoom may not be where everybody wants to spend their night, but obviously we thank you, for taking your time, and we're definitely really excited whenever we do these alumni panels, because it's so cool to hear, where students have moved on to and kind of what they're doing day to day. Because for anybody who's getting ready to do a coding bootcamp or make a career change, there's so much unknown. And while you can kind of look right in front of you and say, okay, learn to code. Okay, I enjoy this. I want to make this a longer term, career for me. Seeing of a year, 2 years, 3 years into the future can be tough. And it'll of course help with your job search as well. So quick introduction. For anybody who isn't familiar with LearningFuze, we are the oldest coding bootcamp in Orange County, one of the top rated programs across the nation. And all of the students who are here today came through our full-time web development program. Some people may say software engineering immersive. Some people may say software development, front-end development, back-end development, you name it. And there's probably been, a different title thrown on. Really what, they're doing is just learning to be professional developers in a short amount of time. And then, of course, getting ready for the job search and a career in tech. So wanted to give a quick shout out and a thanks to Skylar and the Fairstream team who are hosting this event. It's been a great platform. So for anybody, of course, who is out there, and especially if you are in the job search, definitely keep an eye on the events that they have going on and the partners that they have, because they have a lot of hiring partners as well. So quick overview. We are going to go through some brief introductions of the team and the panelists, and then we will jump into some questions. After the questions, hopefully leave a good 30 minutes afterwards for questions from the audience. So Cass, any housekeeping details that people should be aware of?
We're just going to basically we're gonna, in terms of the outline, just intros, and we'll have the main questions, and then we'll have that Q&A. But otherwise, feel free to type in your question in the chat whenever you have it, and then when it is the Q&A, I will whatever question you have in the chat, then I will also present to the panel so that I can answer on the stream.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Cass, for organizing this and getting the word out there. And of course, getting it posted in the different channels as well. So hopefully we have a lot of people here who are ready to soak up some knowledge. My role here at LearningFuze is mostly around the outcome side. So I had the pleasure of working, with all of these students during their job search. So did Cass as well. And for almost all of them, I also believe I did their interviews as they were getting ready to come into the program. So it's really cool to see how far each of them have come, and all the questions that I remember them asking in the beginning before they dove into something as big as a coding bootcamp and put their trust in us. So I will turn it over to each of the panelists for a quick intro. Let's go in alphabetical order, and we'll start with Angel.
Hey everyone, I'm Angel. So I graduated in I was in the January 2021 cohort. So I graduated in April of this year. I currently work as a software engineer at Axon. My company, you may have heard of them. They manufacture tasers and body cameras. My current team works on software that police officers use to manage records and evidence. Is there anything else you want me to add to my intro?
I think that's good. We can dive into some of your background and stuff there too. So that's perfect. All right, Evelyn.
Hey guys, so my name is Evelyn, and I am currently a software engineer 1 at Cox Automotive Kelley Blue Book. If you've ever wanted to know your car's value, then you've definitely used Kelley Blue Book before. And I was part of the 720 cohort, and I graduated in October 2020. And before this, I was actually an English teacher in Taiwan.
Awesome. Jump over to Johnny.
Yo, what's good? I'm Johnny. I am a part of the February 2020 cohort. Before this, I was a scientist, and now I am a software engineer on the front end team for HelloTech. We specialize in like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like smart home space technology. Yeah, and I'm glad to be here.
Cool. He's being modest. He was a beer scientist before this.
I was a beer scientist. If you know anything about, if you need to know anything about beer, come to me.
Let's just stick with the theme of brewing, and we'll jump over to Nick, who was working at the House of Blues for a little while.
Hey guys, I'm Zixi Michelli. My cohort was 519, so May of 2019. I used to work as a bartender, like you said, at the House of Blues for like 10 years. And now I'm a software engineer at Veris.
Nice. And we will wrap it up with Tony.
Hey everyone, my name's Tony. I was also class of 519, go 519, so May 2019. And I'm currently a senior software engineer at Veris. Veris is essentially just like a dev shop, and we do a lot of different work for other companies. I'm sure Nick will dive into his work, as I will also. Before this, I was in investment banking. And is that it? Did I cover everything? I had a lot of examples. I
think that's good. I mean, if you want to, do you like long walks on the beach? What are you cooking?
Okay.
We'll skip
some
like
a first date thing. Okay.
But hopefully people were kind of listening in and thinking to themselves, wow, you have such a different background of, people and what they had done beforehand. I know, Angel, we didn't touch on your background. If you want to kind of add that in there.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So immediately before LearningFuze, I was working as a medical assistant full-time. Before that, I worked at T-Mobile briefly as an engineer, but not a software developer. So I actually did a complete 180 when I tried to go to medical school, and then I was like, nope. So I had a bunch of jumping around.
Yeah. So your degree had you taking some coding classes, or at least kind of getting introduced to tech, correct?
Yeah, I think I took one coding class that was for my degree. So it definitely wasn't what I was planning or like what I was doing in my previous job. No software development at all at my last engineering job, but it did give me exposure.
Yeah. Did anybody else take a coding class, whether it was like in high school or college, and then of course just headed off into a different direction afterwards?
Yep, I did.
What class was that, Nick?
I took this was in like 2014 or something like that. I took a Android development class, so it was all Java.
Okay. Yeah. So, both of you had kind of had a little bit of exposure, to coding and to the world of engineering, but, once again, it wasn't your main focus at the time. So the other three, so Johnny, Evelyn, and Tony, I saw you nodding your head saying no. So if you didn't have a class in college or high school, how was it, that you found out about coding boot camps and decided to, kind of head off in this direction?
I'll go ahead and go. So I actually was originally interested in UX UI design because I had more experience in like graphic design. I always had an interest of that since like high school. So when I was researching, I actually figured out that, the creation of the actual website is through coding. And that's how I kind of started looking into boot camps and eventually found LearningFuze.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny?
Yo, honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like right after the brewery, I was like, I didn't want to do this anymore. So I had like a good 2-year break of just like, for lack of a better word, just into the wild. And then I actually ran into a friend at a gym, and then he's the one that actually suggested to try out software because he jumped into software. And like this dude was like crazy entrepreneur, super successful, but he gave it all up to go into software. So I was like, if he's doing it, I should do it too. And I kind of just, followed his way.
Nice. What about you, Tony?
Yeah, it was pretty much something similar. I entered investment banking or finance as a means to like eventually enter tech. And I just thought it was really interesting. I hated IB. It was brutal hours, really top down structure. Yeah, it was just brutal. And so like junior year going into my senior year, I turned down like a return offer and then didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, why don't I just enter tech like directly as an engineer? And so I started looking into like teaching myself. So I taught myself for about like 6 months before looking into boot camps and maybe following like something more structured, something where I can network a little better. And that's how I found LearningFuze.
Yeah, no, it's good that you had a little bit of exposure to coding, and I don't think there's anybody who would question the idea that you want to have done some coding on your own before going into a boot camp, not just to confirm that it's something that you enjoy, but also give yourself the best chance to succeed in the program. So we in a lot of the other alumni panels, we had kind of talked about what people did during the boot camp. But today I think the goal is more to talk about kind of life after the boot camp and what it is to work as a professional, developer. So let's start with, the people who have been doing this, the shortest so far. So Angel, what has it been like at Axon, who is, if I noticed or remember correctly, it has offices in 17 different countries, a couple hundred employees, and you're heading into your first few months. What was that onboarding process like?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember. I remember the first week onboarding, I was trying to set up my dev environment, and that was really stressful because there was so much I had to install into my computer. I didn't know if I was doing it right. And I was struggling to know when the balance is of like when is a good time to ask for help, because I don't want to bother other people. I think that's still something that I'm struggling with now, just to figure out like what's the balance. How long should I spend trying to bang my head against the wall before I reach out. Yeah, I think I'm really lucky too that there's an office here in Seattle, and so I am mostly remote, but if I want to, I can go in and meet with my team lead. And so I've been going in about like once a week to pair with him when I get stuck, and that's been a really good balance for me. Yeah, so far I like it a lot. It's definitely a huge learning curve, learning the code base, because it's really different. Right now I'm doing TypeScript and React, and it was a lot just figuring out like what things even mean, just looking at it. But now I think after 2 months now, I'm starting to get the hang of it. So I feel more confident now.
Awesome. And Evelyn, you've been a professional developer for almost a full year, if we're combining both positions. How was kind of the process like? Because you've also started with a smaller company and then you moved over to Cox. What were those, onboarding processes like for you?
So yeah, like you said, I've been doing this for almost a year now professionally. My first job I started, it was a super small startup. It was literally about like 4 developers, and I was the only girl, so that was very interesting. But they were really, it was a great experience. They gave me about like 2 weeks to get ramped up. I was doing Angular and TypeScript then, and mainly front end. But in this current job right now, I'm doing full stack. So I shifted back to React actually, and then we use GraphQL, and we use C# in our back end. So it's been a wild ride. It really has. But my first job definitely prepared me for my second one. So even though it was a smaller environment, I still learned a lot that I can like take to my current position.
Yeah, so I just to quickly follow that up, I've seen a lot of Cox Automotive being recognized nationally for the culture that they've created. Is that something that lives up to, the awards and the accolades?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So that's actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to work at Cox Automotive, Kelly Blue Book, because I saw like on LinkedIn and everything through Marv. If you're not connected with him, definitely connect with him. I like all the awards everyone's won and all the fun they're having there while still doing a lot of hard work. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I wanted to work there.
Yeah. And then Johnny, what about you? I think you were at Novum for almost a year and then decided to make the change. What was that kind of process like when you were looking for that second job? Do you think having 10, 11 months gave you a leg up, or would you have possibly maybe had an easier time staying a little bit longer?
No, I think having that title software engineer kind of carries you, right? Like a lot of people, they always said this in the beginning, like get your foot in the door and then that'll open up more doors. And that's kind of exactly what happened at Novum. So my time at Novum was, I guess you can say it was short. It was less than a year. So there I was a full stack engineer. And Novum was a very small startup agency, right? But we used a lot of like bleeding edge technology, right? There was like Next.js, Gatsby, GraphQL, and you had your own freedom. You had your own playground to kind of choose what kind of technology you want to use, what kind of design systems you want to use. So there was a lot of freedom and a lot of just kind of like experimental, like, all right, I'm gonna pick something from the hat and kind of go with it. And then switching over to Hello Tech, like everything kind of lesser. I'm a front end engineer at Hello Tech. The VP at my company actually decided to separate front end and back end because he felt that was the best. It was optimal. And I kind of agree with him too. So I'm not touching too much on back end. Like there's a little bit of back end that you have to like kind of understand, right? Like how to feed APIs and what comes back from the APIs, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of it is like learning a giant code base, like not just one code base, like 3 code bases, maybe 4. And since you're not using, like, you don't have that playground to kind of pick and choose what kind of technologies you want to use, you're kind of focused on, you're kind of specializing in the technologies that they already have set up, their own design systems, whatever they have, and etc. But I did think that my time at Novum helped me. It helped me in the sense of like CI/CD, like kind of the workflow. But everything else kind of starts from the basics, right? Like if you have a basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like that kind of bleeds into like everything else. So
awesome. Tony and Nick, you guys came out of the program, and if I remember correctly, had taken some shorter term contracts and gigs. Let's start with Nick. How did you feel when you were starting one of those, contract gigs, knowing that there is kind of an end date? It's not this full-time, opportunity where you can stay for 2 or 3 years if you wanted to.
For me personally, I thought it was great because it was a stepping stone. It was my foot in the door. I knew like I was going to have to, wind up the job cannon again and fire off a bunch of applications in a couple months. But it was just like, I got that experience. And like afterwards, just getting that, 4 months under my belt, it helped me a lot with getting recognition for more interviews afterwards and like, continuing with my development journey.
Tony, how was your initial contract with Cushco?
Still to this day, my favorite job, actually, just based on the people. It was like a pretty big company at the time. But I loved every person I worked with. It was like maybe like an 8-person engineering team. I loved my boss. I still talk to him sometimes. Unfortunately, like financially, they weren't doing too hot, and so they couldn't renew. But yeah, still to this day, like my favorite job. I'm still kind of looking for that high. Yeah, very like startup feel. Yeah.
Did you guys take anything away from kind of those contract experiences, and did you feel anything different working in an environment where you knew, once again, this isn't long term versus where you are now, where that you're probably going to be there for 6, 9, 12 months?
Yeah, actually, that probably shaped like how my career kind of I guess shifted or like progressed. Just the fact that I knew that, based on how I knew the company was doing, likely even if they loved me, probably couldn't renew. And so I just made sure I stayed sharp. I leak coded a lot. And yeah, and since then I'm just always thinking like nothing's permanent. Just look for the next thing if something happens. So you're always kind of ready. So there's less lead up for like prep time for interviews and like applications, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, an important takeaway is that while you do want to, go somewhere, stay long-term, you kind of have to be comfortable knowing that there is something that could change, whether it's, on the company side or just, on your side, and kind of being ready for that. I know Johnny had said he was there for, a short time, but, 11 months is still a pretty decent little, amount of time in the tech world when, the average job seeker is, I think, switching every 1.5, years. So it is something to kind of, keep your eyes open and peeled for. Because the other thing that's nice too about a contract is if you get in there, and it doesn't turn out to be the best fit, you have kind of that easy out, and exit kind of later on. So thinking back to, kind of your younger selves back before going through a boot camp and now working as a professional developer, we'll start at the top again with Angel. Is there any piece of advice you would give yourself, before going through a coding boot camp?
Ooh, I would say similar to the sentiment that was echoed by a lot of you here, that it's okay to not know what you want to do. Because I feel like just prior to going to LearningFuze, I was working full-time as a medical assistant, and I thought I wanted to go to medical school. And then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, well, like now I'm starting to realize that this isn't my goal. And I felt really stressed because I was like, I really don't know. I thought I knew. And as someone, one of my friends went to a coding boot camp and suggested that to me. And I think like now after going through the boot camp and, getting a job, I feel so much more relieved, and I'm so glad that I was able to experience that too, and come to that realization myself. And I think even now, I'm 27 years old, and I finally have my first stable feeling job. I'm feeling pretty good about that. So it's okay to take your time and figure out, what you truly want to do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good feeling, knowing that you're going in every day and you're going to be there for a little while. Evelyn, any tips for younger Evelyn?
Yeah, so it's kind of going off what Angel said too, just kind of wait until you're ready. Because thinking back, if I were to do this when I was 25 or even a few years ago, I probably wasn't mentally ready and willing to do the hard work. So definitely take your time. And then also once you're in the boot camp, trust the process, trust the instructors, trust that you'll eventually understand how things connect, and just try your best, try to take it day by day, because it is overwhelming.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny?
Be awesome. No, I'm just kidding. What advice would I give myself? So kind of piggybacking, no, not really piggybacking, but I would probably say
It's okay.
I would give myself advice to double down on what you can bring to the table. There's always this talk about being this great developer, right? You got to know all this thing about all this tech and all this stuff, but double down on soft skills and stuff that you can also bring to the table. And I think don't get carried away of learning too much tech, but just be also a good soft skilled person.
Yeah. Do you think that there was any, I guess, kind of type of, fire or, something that kind of burning inside of you after taking some time away from work and, thinking about what was next coming into the boot camp? Did you have, just a hunger to learn and to do something?
I guess so. It was more I did it. I liked it. Let's keep going. And it was just kind of I think that passion, that drive to just all right, if you like it, and just keep going for it. And I think that to piggyback what Angel and Evelyn said, make sure you're ready to do it. Don't just do it just because everyone else is doing, or you're following the dollar signs or something like that. Just make sure you want to do it and go.
Yeah. Well, Nick, what about yourself? Any advice that you would give, or something you may have wanted to do differently?
Any advice? The advice I would give to myself is probably don't compare yourself to others and focus on your own growth, because sometimes I would find myself getting imposter syndrome because other people were getting certain things and I wasn't. So that was my main takeaway is focus on your own growth, and everything will come.
Yeah. So Tony, speaking of, giving advice and imposter syndrome, you've got a younger brother who just graduated the program. And I mean, we don't rank anybody. You guys, we love all of our children. But I think even you saw his presentation and it was pretty impressive. So were there any tips that you had kind of given him when he was coming in?
Well, I know he's a smart kid. He's smarter than me. And so I knew like that in that capacity, I always tell everyone he's smarter than me for sure. In that capacity, he was going to be fine. I just was worried that maybe if he doesn't focus up or he got a little complacent. So I would say like opposite to what Nick is saying, and what Nick said was perfect. I was actually going to say that he stole it. And so I'll take the opposite foot and say, if you're doing really well or you feel like you're doing well, make sure you really like evaluate where you are, not relative to like maybe someone you're sitting next to, but really just figure out if you know everything, read documentation, really quiz yourself, and don't feel like complacent with where you are. I would just say keep trying to learn, assuming you know nothing.
So your brother also came in, with a really unique kind of experience because he brought some friends with him as well. Was there any worries that, coming in with friends, you also might take it a little bit, less seriously than somebody who's kind of coming in, they're doing this solo, they're going to be super hyper focused?
I think it depends on the kind of friends you have, right? I think knowing my brother's friends that wanted to do the cohort, and knowing my brother really, I wasn't too worried. I think they were there paying money to learn something. And so I would hope that like you kind of take that seriously. Even if your friends aren't there, you're not there to goof off. You're really there to like grind it out. And so I made sure he knew that. I'm pretty sure he knew that before I told him, but I got to tell him anyways. But yeah,
no, it's a great point. And Johnny, I mean, you came in, you took the class and had a buddy in there as well. Did you guys have like, did you think there's any advantages to having somebody else also that you could kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, shoot the shit with sometimes?
Yeah. Shout out to Michael. Shout out to Michael of class 2020. Oh no, wait, February 20. I'm sorry, my bad. But yeah, like we came in together, we did this together, and we're software engineers together now. I think there is advantages, right? Like you like going into the bootcamp, like you have like a support system, right? And I think that pays dividends. Like you always have someone to do something with, and you always you can confide in somebody. So it's like this is a partnership kind of type of deal. So there can be disadvantages, but we won't talk about that. We won't talk about the disadvantages. We'll talk about the positives here.
Well, I mean, I think it's good to be aware of both sides because, I think it's easy for people to think, oh, I'm going on this journey. I want to bring other friends with me on this career change. But if that person isn't ready for it, if they don't have the same focus and desire and work ethic that you do, that could end up being more of a distraction than the actual help and support, that it really can be. So it can go really, really well. But, on the other side of the coin, there is a danger zone of kind of getting a little bit too, complacent. So going back around, I know imposter syndrome, was brought up by Nick, and, the term gets thrown around a lot. I think we can all agree it's never really going to go away. And especially now that you are professional developers, there is an expectation of the work that you're doing. You're getting paid by a company to do this. So Evelyn, how do you manage those expectations and that internal mental stuff?
Oh, so I guess how I manage that. So the first thing I tell myself is to like not get overwhelmed, because I think that's where it stems from. Like I get overwhelmed sometimes looking at the code base, especially when I first started. I was looking through the code and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't understand any of this. Like it's so confusing. Like what do I do? And then you kind of have to take a step back and then remember, like tell yourself, I went through the boot camp, like I had a previous job, like I know how to do this. I just need to take it step by step and like look through it like line by line. And it does get better like with time, with more experience and more exposure to your code base, to the different applications your company may have. But it won't, like you said, it doesn't really ever go away. You just get better at ignoring that voice in your head. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. And, it is the voice in your head. It's just like, so many other aspects of life. Angel, what is your, experience been like, once again, large company, and not just a large company, but a company that's doing work that is, in kind of life and death situations, with these body cams and stuff. So do you have any tips or tricks for managing imposter syndrome?
Yeah, actually, something that was really interesting that came up every other week. My org does this like bi-weekly article club where we read and discuss an article. And so the one we discussed yesterday was 20 things I've learned in my 20 years as a software engineer. And the number one thing was, I still don't know very much. And the reason, what they wrote in there was that the reason that many of us went into software and the industry is because we're all lifelong learners and there's so much to learn. So it's not possible to learn it all. And many senior engineers on my team, echoed the sentiment as well, that, we're all experiencing imposter syndrome to some degree. And once you get over it, that's when you really can learn and teach others and grow. And so hearing them talk about this like that made me feel better about myself. But I mean, of course, I still experience it quite a bit, being the newest person on my entire team. But I think just keep getting more experience and spending more time looking at the code base. That's really what it takes to just finally feel more confident about that.
Yeah, gosh, that's so cool that the company has those organized conversations and discussions, on a regular basis, because it's easy for it to kind of just go by the wayside, and for somebody to say, oh, well, the junior developers, the junior engineers should know that they can reach out. Well, if we already have this, this voice in our head telling us that we're not good enough, that voice is also probably going to be telling us, don't bother them, don't reach out. So it's good that they have those, kind of that support structure in place. So without, talking about imposter syndrome too much, did any of the guys from the panel have tips or tricks of how they kind of manage it? You guys can also just say ditto what Evelyn and Angel said.
It never goes away. Honestly, it never goes away. like sometimes you just sit there, it's just like, dude, I have no idea what the hell's going on. Like, and you're just kind of staring at it for like a couple hours. You're just like, you still don't know what's going on. And then sometimes if you're working on a feature that like is brand new, sometimes your seniors don't even know what the hell's going on. So it's and not knowing is good, right? Because not knowing means there's an avenue to learn. But just be open to learning, right? Don't just shut down and just like, I can't do it, I think one of the best advices that I got was instead of saying you can't, say I'll figure it out or something like that. Something along the lines of that. So yeah, but it never really goes away. I'm still confused too.
It's good to know. Well, jumping over, to and something that I think, you had mentioned is, being comfortable that knowing that some of these other people, these senior engineers, which, Tony, we got a senior engineer here. These senior engineers are running into the same problems. And it's actually something I had heard from an employer partner, which is they can't wait to be back on site, because one of the things that they want their junior engineers to see is the senior engineers struggling. When you're on Zoom, when you're working remotely, you don't see those seniors staring at, their computer screen, or maybe even pacing around their house, trying to figure out what's going on. So with the remote hybrid on-person, kind of theme in mind, what is your guys's, over at Veris, Nick and Tony, what are you guys currently, what's your structure and setup? Are there plans to go back in person, or is it going to be remote for the time being?
Do you want to answer? Or you want me to answer?
Okay, I'll answer. It's permanent remote and it's totally optional. The office is open just whenever we feel like going in. Me and Nick actually haven't run into each other at the office. We kept missing each other. I was like on trips or something. But yeah, like it's a pretty cool like little office space, very open floor. So it's like a lot of room for small talk and interaction. And when I'm not feeling antisocial, I do go in. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, and to add to that, before COVID, Well, me and Tony are both new with the company, but before COVID, they were pretty much Orange County only. Like they hired outside remote people for certain roles. But after COVID happened, they pretty much released everyone into the wild and started hiring all over the place. And I think now Verus has employees in 34 states, and they have an office and a team in Costa Rica as well. So it really kind of, opened the doors for a lot of people, and a lot of opportunity was available.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too. Is they have been around for a while. They really prided themselves. I remember visiting the offices, in what they had on site, and not just the video games, but the Friday beer, and they would do, of course, the kitchen's fully stocked. I was just blown away. I could have hung out in the kitchen all day. But I'd be curious, Johnny and Evelyn, you had mentioned starting out with a startup, kind of in a small business, when your first roles. So were those positions on site, or were those also fully remote?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So my first position at the startup, it was completely on site, like even during COVID. Of course, like if you, they were pretty flexible though. Like if you had like any appointments or you felt sick or anything, they would let you work from home. So that was really cool. But definitely being there in person helped me learn a lot faster, I think, like just as a first position.
Yeah, what about you, Johnny?
So Nova was really cool because they were remote before remote became cool. So yeah, so history lesson was in 2019, like the new CEO got rid of the office because he felt that the office was excessive. So they cut the lease, and then they made everything remote. So like from my professional experience, it's always been remote. So even my current company, it's remote with the option to go in, but it's out in Westwood, and probably never gonna go to Westwood. So I'm pretty much remote for forever. So yeah, that's just my experience, man. Like even in LearningFuze, like my cohort shifted from like in person to like remote. So the remote life is the life, I guess.
No, it's definitely nice, especially if you've got that nice little workspace and everything. Well, I don't know if people have been thinking and holding back on questions from the crowd, but of course, if anybody is interested in kind of typing those in and starting to fill up that pipeline, we'll turn it over here quickly and get those answered. I can talk all day. But I wanted to, ask Angel, because Angel actually is up in Seattle and took our classes both, in Seattle and, landed a job up there. So what was it like taking, the classes from, another state, luckily still the same time zone, and then kind of going through a job search where, let's be honest, LearningFuze probably isn't recognized as much up there as it is, in Orange County.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I had too much of a different experience than anyone else in my cohort, since my cohort was fully remote as well. And all of my interviews were remote. I have to admit, the one thing that I wish I had, the only thing that my hesitation for enrolling in LearningFuze in the first place was that most of the connections that you have at LearningFuze are local. And I thought that would be an issue for me. But actually, I feel like that helped me a lot, because I was, TJ and Cass put in my resume to a lot of local companies that were hiring remote. And I just took every opportunity I could to practice interviewing. Eventually, the job that I landed, I got through a referral from a friend. So that worked out for me. But I did interview with a lot of other companies that were through LearningFuze as well. So I don't think it really impacted me at all, because right around April, I think a lot of companies were trying to hire a lot, and they were open to hiring remote.
Awesome. No, I'm glad that, that it did go so well. And, it is something that, Cass and I have noticed, on our side, is that as many companies and managers may still prefer to be on site or in person, there is a much more open-minded approach to either hiring somebody remote. And, I had a conversation earlier today where the person said, we just have a cool office. We're a small business, and we really want to make sure that, people feel supported and part of the team. And so we'd want somebody, on site, but hey, if somebody's a rock star, if somebody's the right fit, we're going to make sure that we can, be flexible to their needs. So Cass had mentioned some questions were lined up. So I will turn it over to Cass and let her fire away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your experience and wisdom as well. So I do have a couple of questions. Hold me. Okay. So Aaron asked, what is a skill or character trait that's important to being a developer that you only learned was important after working as a developer? And this is for all of you. Yeah, Nick.
I'll answer. Communication is extremely important. You need to be able to let people know what you're doing. And if you're struggling with something, you need to let them know. One of the things I learned is, even though, you might be struggling really hard to understand something, reach out to whoever is above you or with you on this project, whatever project you're working on, because if you fail silently, it's not going to look good because you didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, I'll double down on that. Like, just double down on what I said earlier. Like, double down on your soft skills and being able to communicate. Some of the hiring managers that I've spoken to, like, they've always just said, like, we really like you, made it this far in the interview process, because we enjoyed that you're able to talk about anything, right? So always bring up your questions. Always don't be a silent failure, like Nick said. Be able to talk to people, and I think that skill can carry you not just in your career, but just in your social life.
Very nice. Anyone else want to add on? All right. And then the next question from Quentin is, what skills beyond the LearningFuze curriculum are handy to learn from your day-to-day tasks?
I don't know if this is a skill, but it does help for job opportunities and interviews, and possibly I don't know, moving up the corporate ladder, so to speak, a little better. Just having a deeper understanding of data structures and algorithms. That's something I took effort to try to learn myself. Just through Google blind 75 LeetCode questions. Those are super helpful. Those are generally what's asked at FANG companies and some of the better tech companies as well. I wouldn't say that you ever use those day to day, but it's a method of measurement because it's a competitive atmosphere. That, as well as double down on communication. That's not something that anyone could really teach you. It's just something you do day to day. So just make sure you're being very clear in your written, in this remote age, very clear about your written communication to whoever it is. Very clear.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy with the Git nightmares. You don't want to, I don't know, you don't want to, you don't want to mess up the code base. So get familiar with Git, because just some Git nightmares out there.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry, just to kind of jump in there, Tony, you had mentioned, data structures and algorithms being, really important to kind of continue to strengthen your skill set up. But then you had also mentioned you're not really using it, on a day-to-day basis. What do you think is a good balance? Is it something that people should be actively doing, just as they're job searching? Or do you find yourself, let's say on a Saturday, you're just like, you know what, I'm going to hop into LeetCode and see if I can tackle one of these?
No, I'm not crazy. I don't do that when I like a position. But yeah, I would say when you're in the grind for a job search, a couple weeks before you update your resume, even, I would say grind out those 75 questions, make sure you can do them, and you understand why it's working. I would say more than just it's more than just I guess a means to an end to get a job. I found it actually really helpful to really understand how some things work. Understanding what a hash table was JavaScript does a lot of that stuff for you, etc. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. And, it is what you're, doing as engineers. People ask what's the difference between a developer or an engineer. And there isn't like a super, super clear one, but I do think one of the things that you can say as an engineer is I understand what's going on under the hood. So, even though JavaScript is doing a lot of this for you, dive deep, Have any of you gotten into or been added to the interview process at your company? And if so, have you, what types of questions do you like to, ask people from more of a technical perspective?
Everyone's shaking their head no, so I'll go. Not at Varus. I haven't, because I've been working here for, I think, almost 6 months now, and that's about it. And so they haven't added me to that yet. But previous job, I did interview a couple of people because we were looking for new like remote engineers. I just try to take it from the perspective of like how I would feel in their shoes. And I do remember feeling really nervous and like inadequate, and then ready to like, I don't know, eat a bucket of ice cream after because you're sad because you knew you bombed it. It's just normal. And so I was like, I don't want to put people through that. It's horrible. It was like one of the worst things ever. And so I just try to like ask them stuff that I think will pertain to the job. Of course, like there are certain guidelines that they say, like you have to ask like this leak code question, or like you have to cover linked lists in some way. But I try to make it like as easy as possible, because I know day to day when I'm working with them, I don't care if you know what a linked list is. You can Google it, you'll figure it out. I try to ask questions that make me understand that they can think for themselves, and they're not just spewing out memorized documentation or like leak code answers. Yeah,
no, that's a good point too. And I think hopefully people who are in their job search now are thinking about it, hopefully it kind of demystifies, who the people are that you're going to be talking to. They understand that it's tough. Now, some of them will, like Tony mentioned, default and have set questions that they have to ask, which can be a good thing, because the last thing you would want to do is interview and Tony's asking you, data structures and algorithms questions, and then Nick comes in and Nick just chit chats with you, and it turns out that they hire Nick's candidate because he said it was easy, and Tony's guy's like, oh, he couldn't answer the data structure stuff. So companies do have to have these processes in place to make sure that it is a more fair and equitable interview for everybody. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Cass.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. And I definitely think it's great that communication is still a running point from the last question that was initially brought up. And then also the next question is, how much time did you or do you dedicate to personal projects after finishing LearningFuze? And this is from Jimmy.
I personally, after LearningFuze, like directly after LearningFuze, I dabbled in like React Native because I wanted to go down more of a mobile route. But my first job I got was not a mobile developer. So those projects didn't really, move, like it wasn't applicable for what I got my job for. But fast forward to now, I've actually been working on a mobile app for the last couple months. So that personal project actually helped a lot with having that base knowledge of, mobile development. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then this is more for Tony, but Nicholas asked, how long does it typically take to get to a senior position?
That's I don't think there's like a straightforward answer. I think like when I was moved to a senior position, I think like beginning of this year or something, I wasn't magically much better at coding or anything like that. As I'm the same person, I think probably even slightly worse than when I freshly graduated, honestly, because I was like studying all the time. But really, it's just about I guess like showing your worth to whoever you're working with, and like knowing what you're worth. And so that means going above and beyond. Like, don't be that guy that like turns on the camera when no one turns on the camera. But like if like some people have their cameras on, like put forth that effort in like a remote environment to like put yourself out there and like they know you. Because senior is not someone who's like just magically knows more. It's more so just someone they can trust for a little more day-to-day responsibilities, usually pertaining to other engineers. So what they care about is like, I don't know, if you're like relatively sociable or like you know how to be a leader in some capacity. Yeah, I would say just put your head down, keep working, and try to network. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's very solid advice. Thank you for answering that.
I was a little disappointed, Tony, because I really pictured you as having morphed into a new type of person, you know, just the whole Pokemon, you know, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I'm like 8 feet tall now. It's crazy.
Oh, I
As soon
just
as they
can't tell
promoted
because
me.
we're on Zoom.
Yeah, you just can't tell.
I know you can't tell what any height is when it's over Zoom. And then Brian asked, what would be your advice for junior devs just starting their first job? Oh, this is for everyone, by the way.
Take it slow. It's okay to be slow, right? It's definitely okay to be slow. Like, don't feel offended if someone's giving you like a very minor task, like, oh, change the color of this button. Oh, you know, change the copy of this. You know, take it slow, trust the process, and slowly you're gonna ramp up. Yeah, and don't feel like you have to know everything. Like I said, like there's a lot of people who don't know anything. Like I think today, like I was talking to one of my seniors, and I was like, "Hey, like, do you know how to do this?" He's like, "No." So like, you don't have to know everything, and like the people above you, they don't know everything either. You know, so yeah.
That's so awesome. That's very great.
To add to that real fast, they hired you as a junior knowing your skill set. So they know that you have a lot to develop. You're still great at your job. You're going to be great at your job. It's just, and this goes back to imposter syndrome. You're still going to have that, like, am I good enough for this? But they hired you knowing that, and they acknowledge that, like, you know, you're not a senior level person, and you're going to get stuck, and you're going to need help in certain situations. So it's not, you know, just don't trip yourself out overthinking that. It's like they know your skill set and they know how much experience you have. So
Awesome. Yeah, that's so true. And then another one is, do you feel, this for everyone too, do you feel you came out of the boot camp stronger with front end or back end? And we can actually go around the table for this. So we'll start with Angel.
I personally felt stronger in front end. I think just working with React, I didn't do too much with databases, and not that I remember, to be honest. And that was when I started at my company. They asked me, you know, what do you feel more comfortable with? And I just said front end. And so for the most part, I've been given more front end tasks, but with the option into the future to go more into back end if I want to.
Awesome. What about you, Evelyn?
Coming out of the boot camp, definitely front end. It was actually from my first job that I got really good at front end, like CSS and yeah, all that good stuff. But because my current position right now is a full stack engineer, so I am exposed to like the back end and like the GraphQL layer and like, yeah, so it's, and actually we do a lot of stuff with AWS. So that's one thing. If you want something else to learn, look into AWS. So yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely came out of LearningFuze as a front end heavy. I think LearningFuze was more front end heavy, so I think naturally you're exposed to a lot of front end technologies. Still pretty front end heavy. I'm solely a front end engineer, but like back end is just a different animal, man. like GraphQL layers, like server structures and all that stuff. Like it can get kind of hairy, but it's always interesting to learn, right? Like even though I am strictly front end, like I still need to like understand what the hell's going on in the back end, right? Like how to SQL joins and like try to understand where all this data is coming from. So you need both.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What about you, Tony?
I don't remember the last time I used CSS. That's like, yeah, it's like I was like 90% back end for me. I think Nick will tell you. We were in the same final project together, and I don't think I remember one line of code from the front end. He like carried that, so that's all him. But I was like 95% back end probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I came out probably stronger at front end, but my first two jobs was like 90% back end. So the skills translate. So it's not like, you know, it's going to be an issue. You learn how to learn, so you'll be able to do anything afterwards. So, but yeah, I would say currently I do mainly front end, but coming out of it front end, but in between I was almost all entirely back end.
Awesome. And then actually one like last question, it looks like. Jonathan, he's currently in the part-time cohort, or he did the part-time cohort. And he asked, how do you manage your time for job search? His situation is that he recently got hired for a medical job. So you can also touch upon if you were like looking for a job while having another job, if that makes sense.
Looking for a job is a full-time job in itself. So I think speaking for myself, coming out of boot camp, I didn't have a job. So looking for a job was my job. So all of my time was invested into looking for a job. I do understand, there's commitments and, bills to pay and stuff like that. And I think it differs from every individual. So from my perspective, full-time job, looking for a job.
Definitely. And then actually, Johnny, what was your experience like when you were looking for another job while still working at Novum?
If you get your job done, you can kind of do whatever you want. And I spent most of my free time like looking for other jobs, kind of on the free time. I feel like I'm on my computer like almost all the time in this pandemic. So like maybe at 10 p.m. I'd be, oh, hey, look, a job on Indeed. All right, apply. Oh, hey, look, another job. So you just kind of just do it on the side whenever you can, whenever you want to. There's all like, I know there's like the theory of like send them out in the morning. So sometimes I'll find something I like and then I'll just pre-fill everything and then in the morning turn on my laptop, send, and then get to the meetings.
Very nice. And then Nick, did you want to share your thoughts?
If you're looking, it's you just gotta learn to balance your time. If you have, like, I read what he said in chat. He says he graduated, he's not a current student. So if you're working and you're also looking for a job, it's just mainly staying sharp and managing your time. Because I did the same thing. Like I've jumped jobs and I look for other jobs while I was currently working. So it's just a time management thing.
I think that's a great point. Maybe even setting, kind of, tasks with rewards for yourself. So, before hopping in, watching Netflix or playing video games or, meeting some friends, you send, and submit 5 applications. Because it's really easy to finish your day today and then you're tired, you go eat, before you know it, it's now 9 p.m. and, are you going to start submitting applications then? So doing some of the harder stuff, either first thing in the morning or immediately after, wrapping up your day.
Sometimes you got to give up that last episode of Squid Game,
Awesome. Yeah, that was pretty much the last question. So TJ, if you want to wrap it up.
Yeah. Any final pieces of advice that people feel that, something that maybe we didn't cover today, something that was maybe something that, was a mantra or, something that kind of stuck with you throughout your career? No pressure to have something, but I wanted to kind of leave it open in case there was something. Tony or Evelyn, and then Tony.
Shout out Tim D. That guy's awesome. I love Tim D. You guys should all listen to Tim D, whatever he says. That's like my advice. If you're in the cohort, just listen to him.
Yes.
That guy rocks.
Second.
He's so cool.
Third. Tim D is like some knowledge beacon, man. Like you ask him a question, he just looks at it like, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, dude, Tim D.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to say, take all the advice that TJ and Cass give you. So the two positions I actually got were both through LinkedIn networking. I was really active on LinkedIn, like during like the entire time I was in the cohort, and people actually reached out to me for positions. So that's one thing I was really fortunate, but it's because I actually did everything that Cass and TJ said to do on LinkedIn. Like, so really, yeah, buff up your LinkedIn. Be very active.
Yeah. To add to that, networking is super important. Tony got me the job at Veris, which, if I didn't know him, I wouldn't be able to, say that, obviously. But, be friends with your cohort mates, get close with them. Everyone else, communicate, networking is super important. I have people who I know who hit me up for, other positions, but I'm, locked down. But, networking is super important.
I wanted to add that something that really helped me with my interview process was going to Whiteboard Wizards. So while I was in the cohort or during LearningFuze, I was host of Whiteboard Wizards, and that really forced me to go and practice every week, even if I didn't want to. And I think that continuous practice really helped me learn how to communicate during the interview. Actually, during my interview, my interviewer said that he was really impressed how prepared I was. And I think that was one of the key things. So if you're in the cohort, definitely go to Whiteboard Wizards. Even if you graduated, I think you can still join if you want to brush up and you're looking for another job. So definitely do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for taking some time out of your evenings. Thank you to Skylar and the Fairstream team for hosting this and providing the platform. Once again, go check out their website if you're in the job search, or if your company might be hiring and is looking to improve upon their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. It's a great place to start. And as always, we constantly need to say thank you to Cassandra for everything she does from the community side, organizing these, putting together game days, making sure that the alumni community stays so well connected. So with that, I don't know, Cass, is there anything else that I'm missing?
No, pretty much it. And I want to thank you all for participating as well, not just for the panelists, right? Really thank you all for staying in touch with us, but also to our audience members, and especially the really well-constructed questions that were asked for the Q&A. So really thank you all.
Yeah, and go check out Cass's newsletter that she just sent out. There's some nice spooky jokes in there. All right.
I love the ghost emoji.
Yeah. See y'all.
Bye.
Great. Have a good one.